morning and welcome to this Key Stage 3 English lesson. Today we're going to be looking at Carol Ann Duffy's poem, Stealing. So the learning objectives for today are to understand how emotions and feelings can be conveyed in a poem, so how they can be shown, how they're given over. To evaluate the connotations of word choices, so each word could have a different meaning. So the connotation of it might not just be a literal meaning. And finally, to investigate and analyse the speaker's motivations. So the person in the poem, the narrator, why do they do what they do? Okay, as you can see here, this is your starter activity. And what I want you to do is I want you to group these images together. Now, I want you to be really imaginative. Can you think of any unusual ways that you could link them together? So I want you to pause me now for 2 minutes, look at the pictures and think, how can you connect them? Okay, so my views on this were that there was a lot to do with snow. So we can see here on the top right hand side, we can see this animated snowman here, and you can see another one like a real life snowman here. They've got the lovely buttons going down, a scarf and a hat, and big massive smiley faces. Okay, then we've got somebody here, we've got a snowman, but somebody's kicking the snowman like with a karate kick. We've got the baby over here with ice or snow in its hands and it's crying. We've got somebody else here with snow on the boots. So obviously I think maybe that there's a connection with this poem to do with snow or snowman. Then we've got some random objects. So we've got a guitar and a mirror. This here is called a bust. It is a bust of Shakespeare. So basically the chest upwards, and these possessions we'd find in a house. Okay, then we've got someone who's looking very depressed, very, very down, someone that's really, really angry. You've got people here that are a bit happy. Now, what concerns me about this picture with the car is that you can see this lady here on the right-hand side with her arms up in the air, having no cares in the world. But we actually drive with a steering wheel on the right-hand side. So I'm hoping actually this is a left-wheel drive car. Then what else we have got is we've got these thieves here running away. This one's looking rather happy with himself, running away from a situation. And this one's here is looking behind. They seem to have got hold of somebody's DVD player. So they're the sorts of connections I can make. Now, today we need your help as an investigator because there has been a crime. The crime has taken place in a house in Birmingham. There is a family, as you can see, with 2 children. They live there, but they're on holiday at the moment. It is winter time, and the intruder, as you can see here in the picture, they've left a mess in the house and in the garden. So we need your help to work out why this person has done what they have done. So what we need you to do. After reading the poem, you must create a report about the perpetrator, so the bad person of the crime. So, who are they? Who was it? Are they male? Are they female? How old are they? Are they young, middle-aged, or are they old? What is their education like? Did they go to school? Do they go to school? What is their employment history? Have they ever had a job? What sort of job would they have had? What is their lifestyle? So what sort of things do they do through morning, noon and night? What do they do at the weekend? And then finally, what possible motives can you find from them stealing? So how will you write the report? So what I want you to do, okay, is I want you, number one, to think about the language that the speaker uses and what this reveals about them. So you're going to be picking out a quotation, a small piece of language that you can use. Then you're going to look at the poetic techniques. Now, there are other words for poetic techniques, for example, language features or linguistic features. So you're going to pick out those poetic techniques and then look at the effect of them. Furthermore, you'll look at the language that is being used. So in that quotation, what language has been used and how does it convey a sense of isolation? So being on your own, feeling abandoned, feeling lost, and maybe like an outsider. And then look at the negative images, the word images that are created in the poem. And if you want an extension, you can look at the structure of the poem. How many verses are there? What are the length of the lines? Are there any sentences? Does one line run into the next line? So I want to tell you a little bit about Carol Ann Duffy, the poet who wrote the poem Stealing. So you can see a picture of her there. So she is our poet laureate. Now, she was our poet laureate from 2009 to 2019. Now, what is incredible about this role is that the Prime Minister of England, he advises the Queen on who he thinks is the best person to represent poetry for our country. So it is a really significant role. She's also a professor of contemporary poetry at Manchester Metropolitan University, and she has received an OBE, a CBE, and a DBE. And I'm going to give you some time just to read what that means. So it means that she's been awarded something. She's been awarded for her excellence in poetry by the Queen. Okay, right, so now we are going to read the poem. I hope you enjoy it. Please follow it as we read it. The most unusual thing I ever stole? A snowman. Midnight. He looked magnificent, a tall white mute beneath the winter moon. I wanted him, a mate with a mind as cold as a slice of ice within my own brain. I started with the head. Better off dead than giving in, not taking what you want. He weighed a ton, his torso frozen stiff, hugged to my chest, a fierce chill piercing my gut. Part of the thrill was knowing that children would cry in the morning. Life's tough. Sometimes I steal things I don't need. I joyride cars to nowhere, break into houses just to have a look. I'm a mucky ghost, leave a mess, maybe pinch a camera. I watch my gloved hand twisting the doorknob. A stranger's bedroom, mirrors, a sigh like this. Ah. It took some time. Reassembled in the yard, he didn't look the same. I took a run and booted him again. My breath ripped out in rags. Seems daft now. Then I was standing alone amongst lumps of snow, sick of the world. Boredom. Mostly I'm so bored I could eat myself. One time I stole a guitar and thought I might learn to play. I nicked a bust of Shakespeare once, flogged it. But the snowman was the strangest. You don't understand a word I'm saying, do you? Okay, so that is our poem by Carol Ann Duffy. I think it's one of my most favourite poems ever. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each verse. Another word for verse is stanza. We're going to go through each stanza and there'll be 2 or 3 questions along the bottom for you to look at. So this is where we're going to be analysing the linguistic features, the language features that are in that verse. So the first one, can you pick out the use of alliteration? So what is alliteration? Give yourself 10 seconds to think. Okay, do you know what alliteration is? Alliteration is the repetition of letters at the start of words. Now, these letters are normally consonants. For example, Betty Botter bought some butter. So consonants are B, C, D, F, G, H, etc. So can you pick out the use of alliteration, so words starting with the same consonants? What is simile? Give yourself 5 seconds to think about what a simile is. A simile is where we compare one thing to another using as or like. For example, she was tall like a lamppost. He was as fast as a cheetah. So the girl is compared to the length of a lamppost and the boy is compared to being as fast as a cheetah. Can you pick out a simile? And then finally, what does the last sentence make you think about the narrator? So we're going to read through this verse. Then I want you to pause the video for 5 minutes and use that time, 5 to 10 minutes, and use that time to write down your answers. The most unusual thing I ever stole? A snowman. Midnight. He looked magnificent, a tall white mute beneath the winter moon. I wanted him, a mate with a mind as cold as the slice of ice within my own brain. I started with the head. So, pick out the alliteration and what is the effect of that? What does it make us think and feel? Pick out the simile. Again, what does it show about the narrator, the person speaking? And then what does the last sentence make you think about the narrator? I started with the head. So give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to make those notes and pause this video now. So the second stanza. Can you pick out the use of personification? So do you know what personification is? It is giving human feelings and emotions to an inanimate object. So for example, a pen is an inanimate object. It can't jump because if it is, I'd be giving it human actions. So if I said, the pen jumped into my hand, I would be using personification. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the children's nursery rhyme. The sun has got his hat on, hip, 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 hooray. The sun has got his hat on and he's coming out to play. So the sun is an object, it's in the sky, it's a thing. If it is wearing a hat and comes out to play, we're giving it human feelings and emotions. Therefore, we've personified the sun. Now, the second question, what does the narrator show about themselves from the first and last lines? So let's read it. Better off dead than giving in, not taking what you want. He weighed a ton, his torso frozen stiff, hugged to my chest, a fierce chill piercing my gut. Part of the thrill was knowing that children would cry in the morning. Life's tough. Okay, ladies and gents, so pause the video for me there, and then again use between 5 and 10 minutes to write your answers down onto your sheets. Verse 3. So there are 3 questions here. Can you pick out a rule of 3? So a rule of 3 could be 3 verbs or 3 adjectives in a sentence to describe a situation. So I might say, I like pizza, chips and beans. Pizza, comma, chips and beans. But I could also say smoking is dirty, unhealthy, and can make you ill. So I've used 3 words or phrases to describe or to persuade. So can you pick out a rule of 3 from verse 3? Now, what is a sigh? I know sometimes I sigh when I'm at home and I do this. And then people will turn to me and say, what's wrong with you? Why are you sighing like that? We all sigh for different reasons and in different ways. So when we look at this verse, how do you think the narrator sighs? I've done it in quite a sarcastic way, but how do you think they do it? And then finally, from reading this stanza, do you think the thief is a male or female? It never tells us. So you need to look at the words from the poem and look at the connotations of the words and think to yourself, do they relate to a male or do they relate to a female? Or could it relate to both? Verse 3. Sometimes I steal things I don't need, or joyride cars to nowhere, break into houses just to have a look. I'm a mucky ghost, leave a mess, maybe pinch camera. I watch my gloved hand twisting the doorknob, a stranger's bedroom, mirrors. I sigh like this. Ah. Okay, ladies and gents, so again, if you give yourself 5 to 10 minutes, pause this part of the video, answer the questions before going on to the next slide. So, verse 4. Can you pick out the use of repetition and what is the effect of this? Do you know what repetition is? It's to state something, the same word, again, for a certain effect. Maybe it's for tension, maybe it's for suspense, maybe it's to scare us, maybe it's to get us to empathise. Now, can you pick out the metaphor? A metaphor is when we describe something as something else. So if I said to you, oh, my feet are killing me, they're not really killing me. I'm saying that they hurt. but I'm saying it in a different way, using another word, a metaphor. I could say, oh, my stomach's going to explode. My stomach isn't really going to explode, but I'm using a metaphor. What am I trying to imply? I'm implying that I'm really full and I can't eat any more and my tummy hurts. Can you pick out the metaphor? Finally, how do you think the narrator is feeling and why? We said in our learning objectives that we would look at the speaker's motivation for why they do what they do. Verse 4. It took some time, reassembled in the yard. He didn't look the same. I took a run and booted him. Again. My breath ripped out in rags. Seems daft now. Then I was standing alone amongst lumps of snow, sick of the world. Okay, if you pause the video there and then again take between 5 and 10 minutes to write down your answers. The last verse. Again, can you pick out the metaphor in this verse and what is the effect of it? Can you explain that? Why do you think the thief actually stole a snowman? And then finally, who do you think the narrator is speaking to? Boredom. Mostly I'm so bored I could eat myself. One time I stole a guitar and thought I might learn to play. I nicked a bust of Shakespeare once, flogged it, but the snowman was the strangest. You don't understand a word I'm saying, do you? So, again, please pause the video and answer the 3 questions that are at the bottom of the slide. Okay, so we're going to look now at what feelings and emotions are conveyed, are portrayed, are shown, are suggested in the poem, and how do you know? So I picked out these quotations from the poem for you. How is the narrator feeling? Are they angry? Are they sad? Are they confused? Are they bewildered? Are they concerned? Are they happy? So, for example, if we look at the quotation, better off dead than giving in, what does that convey about the speaker? What does that show about them? Another quotation, I took a run and booted him again. What feeling, what emotion comes across there? So what I want you to do now is on your sheet, I want you to write out the quotation, and then around it you can annotate the feelings and the emotions that are shown. And then perhaps you can highlight or underline the words that tell you that. Okay, and finally, what we need you to do now is, after reading the poem, you need to create a report about the perpetrator, okay, the baddie who committed the crime. So, who was it? Are they male or female? How old are they? Are they in education or employment? What is their life history? What is their lifestyle? And what are the motives for them doing what they're doing? Like we've said before, we do not know if they're male or female. We don't know how old they are. It doesn't state it, but does it imply it in some way through the things that they do? So, how will you write the report? Think about the language the speaker uses and what this reveals about them. And you're going to look at the poetic techniques and the effects they have. Finally, you're going to look at the language that is used and how it conveys a sense of isolation, about being an outsider. And you could also then focus on the negative images, the negative words. And if you want to do the extension, you can look at the structure of the poem. So how is it laid out on the page? How many verses has it got? Look at the length of the lines within each verse. Now, what I've done on the right-hand side is I've done an exemplar for you to help you structure your response. So, answering the first question, you see that you do not write down numbers for each of the paragraphs. You just put them straight down. So, I believe the narrator is it a girl? Is it a boy? Could it be both? I think this because it states in the quotation. So you find a quotation, you find some of the text, short piece of text from the poem, and you put that in there. Then you explain it. So this suggests that. So why does it suggest it's a male? Explain it in detail. Why does it suggest it's a female? And again, explain that in detail. Then moving on to the second question, how old are they? So I think the narrator is approximately how many years old? Find a quotation and then explain that quotation. And what we say is that we write a lot about a little. Okay. And then finally, the last paragraph is an example of making a point, using a quotation and explaining it. So the speaker kicks the snowman down because they feel desperately unhappy with their life. I'm so bored that I could eat myself. The speaker does this because they feel it gives them control over their life, which they feel is very dull. Now, the narrator, couldn't actually eat themselves. So a metaphor has been used. If you want to get a higher level, you could have put that in. A metaphor has been used and explain what it really means. Okay. So if we just go back to the learning objectives for the lesson, we were looking at how to understand the emotions and feelings and how they're conveyed in a poem. We've been looking at evaluating the connotations of word choices. So do those word choices make us think it's a male or a female? And we've been looking at why they do what they do. Then finally, to investigate and analyse a speaker's motivations. And again, like we've just said, is why do they do what they do? Thank you so much for taking the time to go through this poem today. If you want to send in your answers, you can do so. You can either email me all of the work, or you can send it in or bring it in to the school office. I look forward to reading it. I will mark it and I'll get it back to you. Many thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye.